This is a WSMV4 breaking news alert.
We are breaking into programming to let you know there's been a verdict in the trial of the former Memphis police officers accused in the beating death of Tyre Nichols.
Right, so all of them, Tadarius Bean, Demetrius Haley, and Justin Smith, they were all just found not guilty on all counts today in a state courtroom in Memphis. We've been watching this live picture right here.
And right now they're about to talk to District Attorney Steve Mulroy. That is him in the white hair walking in the hallway. It looks like he's been following or being followed by the press there. When he starts talking, we're going to get you take you live to that scene. Now, we can tell you those police officers faced a long list of charges, including second-degree murder, aggravated assault, aggravated kidnapping, and official misconduct.
So a jury took about 8.5 hours over the course of 2 days to deliberate to reach their verdict. The full trial lasted 9 days. Let's listen into Mulroy here.
This case, and I am convinced to this day that we had compelling evidence that showed that there was proof for every element of every one of the offenses that we charged. The jury took a different view. That is, of course, their right. That's the part of the decision. I want to start out by commending the trial team, Mr. Hagerman, Ms. Johnson, Ms. Headley, who did an excellent job. I wouldn't have done anything different. I thought they brought a compelling case to bear. I also want to commend the family of Tyre Nichols, who showed extraordinary grace and resilience through an incredible ordeal, an unimaginable ordeal. It's hard for me to understand, as I'm sure it's hard for the public to understand, or many in the public anyway, who watched that video, who heard the testimony, who heard the compelling arguments of trial counsel. It's hard for us to imagine how someone could say that none of the defendants were guilty of any of the charges. I personally think any fair-minded person who watches the video would come to the conclusion that everybody there had some responsibility for Tyre Nichols' death. But as I said, the jury took a different view. What I do know is this: Tyre Nichols is dead and deserves to be alive. And that is a tragedy. It's my hope that the public understands that this is part of the system and that our office will continue to push for accountability for everybody who violates the law, including, if not especially, those who are sworn to uphold it.
What do you think what just didn't connect? What do you think it was? Was it the training? Was it the character witnesses? What do you think it was?
It's so hard to figure that out. It could be any number of a million things, and I am disinclined to try to say, oh, we should have done this differently or we should have done that differently, because I think the trial team did an excellent job. Obviously you had a situation where, arguably two of the more culpable defendants were not present. Then that allowed the remaining defendants to point the finger at others. I personally think that when you take a look at all of the evidence, that shouldn't matter. Perhaps the jury took a different view. It's just impossible to say.
I know it's very early, but is this a case that you all are looking to retry?
I think it is too early for us to say that. I don't know what the grounds would be for that. We do have to accept the finality of a jury verdict in most cases.
Any thoughts about the jury being from Chattanooga and an all-white jury?
Obviously, people have mentioned that as an issue. I'm not going to speculate about that. I think it's a testimony to the fairness of our criminal justice system that we bent over backwards to get a jury from another jurisdiction to assure that the defendants were given a fair trial. Beyond that, I don't think I should comment.
The defense worked on pointing at Emmett Martin as the most violent of everyone there. It seems that they may have landed with the jury. You're securing a guilty plea for Emmett Martin. Can you talk a little more about his involvement?
Well, obviously, I think the proof speaks for itself, and Mr. Martin was, extremely involved and culpable, and played a key role in the unjustified death of Tyre Nichols. What's going to happen over at the the federal court, and what will happen with his case remains to be seen.
What kind of conversation did you have with Tyre Nichols' family when they left today?
We spoke to them briefly. Obviously, they were devastated. I think you could imagine that they would be devastated. I think they were outraged, and I think we can understand why they'd be outraged by this result, given the evidence. They quite understandably decided that they needed to go home and process all this, and we're going to give them that respect and respect their privacy.
What does this... That is Memphis District Attorney Steve Mulroy addressing the media after the 3 Memphis police officers have been found not guilty on all charges in the death of Tyre Nichols.
It's a big enough story we wanted to break into programming for it. Tadarius Bean, Demetrius Haley, Justin Smith, they were all found not guilty on all counts today in a state courtroom in Memphis. Mulroy just moments ago said, in addition to thanking the family, he said, "I'm sure it's hard for the public to understand what was just decided, but he said, it's my hope that the public understands this is part of the system." But they faced a number of charges, long list of charges: second-degree murder, aggravated assault, aggravated kidnapping, and official misconduct as well.
Now, that jury took about 8.5 hours over 2 days to reach their verdict. It was an all-white jury out of East Chattanooga. The full trial lasted 9 days. The 3 former officers still face time in jail. They were convicted on federal charges just last year.
Okay, so they're going to be sentenced the week of June 16th for the federal charges, but again, these state charges, they've been found not guilty on all of them. But if you don't remember, Tyre Nichols fled a 2020 traffic stop after he was yanked out of his car, pepper sprayed, and then hit with a taser. 5 officers who are also black caught up with him, beat him. Nichols died 3 days later.
Yeah, and once again, the 3 officers that were on trial for the state charges have all been found not guilty of every single charge.